Welcome to Curious Minds. So who were the Vikings really? Were they just savage raiders in horned helmets, or something far more complex? For centuries the word Viking has meant fear, burning villages, longships on the horizon, warriors who seemed to love death as much as victory. But here's the real mystery: how did a relatively small population from the cold edges of Europe end up reshaping half the known world? And why are they still so misunderstood today? The Vikings didn't come from nowhere. They emerged from Scandinavia, what we now call Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, and parts of Greenland. Harsh lands, short growing seasons, long winters. Survival itself demanded strength, adaptability, and cooperation. These weren't people raised for comfort. They were shaped by cold, scarcity, and uncertainty. And yet, they weren't born warriors alone. Most Vikings were farmers, fishermen, traders, parents. But when opportunity or necessity called, they became something else entirely. Raiders, explorers, mercenaries. The same man who tilled his field in spring could sail to war in summer. Their belief system played a massive role in this mindset. The Vikings followed Norse paganism, a worldview centered around gods like Odin, Thor, and Frey. Death was not something to fear. Dying in battle was an honor. Those who fell bravely were believed to be taken to Valhalla, a hall of warriors where they would feast and fight until the end of the world. If you truly believed that death in combat meant eternal glory, how would that change the way you fought? This belief produced some of the most feared fighters in history. Berserkers, warriors said to fight in a trance-like fury, ignoring pain, driven by rage and belief. Whether fueled by ritual, substances, or psychology, their effect on enemies was terrifying. Facing someone who didn't fear death was a psychological weapon in itself. But brute force alone doesn't explain the Viking legacy. Their greatest strength may have been their ships. Viking longboats were, honestly, engineering marvels. Lightweight and flexible, they were shallow enough to sail up rivers, yet strong enough to cross open oceans. These vessels didn't just travel coastlines, they penetrated deep inland, striking where no one expected. For the Vikings, rivers became highways, and storms, they were obstacles to master, not barriers to fear. That's how Vikings managed to reach England, Scotland, Ireland, France, and even farther. They sailed right up the Seine and attacked Paris. They conquered large parts of England, including Northumbria. But they didn't just raid, they settled, ruled, married, and eventually blended with local populations. Some Vikings became kings, some became Christians, others traveled east through rivers into what is now Russia, and south toward the Byzantine Empire and Arabia. And yes, Vikings reached North America centuries before Columbus ever set sail. Vikings like Eric the Red founded Greenland, and his son, Leif Erikson, reached Vinland, which is likely modern-day Newfoundland. Archaeology actually confirms it. This wasn't just a myth. It was navigation skill, combined with a daring few societies could ever match. So, Viking society itself was actually more complex than pop culture suggests. Women, for example, had rights that were pretty rare for the medieval world. They could own property, request a divorce, and manage households while the men were away. And, believe it or not, some women even fought alongside the men. The shield maidens of legend are still debated, but archaeology shows women buried with weapons and warrior honors. Whether that was symbolic or literal, it really challenges the idea of Vikings as a purely male war culture. Their weapons, well, they reflected practicality. Axes were chosen over swords. Shields were used actively, forming these shield walls that moved almost like living fortresses. Armor was designed for mobility, not for show. And just to clear things up, there were no horned helmets in battle. That part was a later invention. And their leaders? They became legends. Figures like Ragnar Lothbrok, Bjorn Ironside, Ivar the Boneless, and Eric the Red. Some of these folks were real, some were definitely embellished. But all of them became symbols of an era when reputation mattered just as much as power. Stories were kind of a currency, and fear, well, it traveled faster than ships. Eventually the Viking Age faded, Christianity spread, kingdoms centralized, and raiding gave way to rule. Scandinavia transformed from feared frontiers into structured nations. And here's another curiosity. Today, those same regions rank among the most peaceful, stable, and prosperous societies on Earth. These days, modern scholars see the Vikings not as mindless barbarians, but as adaptive, global players of their time. They were traders just as much as they were raiders, explorers as much as conquerors. Their culture was driven by environment, belief, and opportunity. So, were the Vikings brutal? Absolutely. But were they also innovators, navigators, settlers, and storytellers? Without question. Maybe the real question isn't really who the Vikings were, but why their legacy still fascinates us more than 1,000 years later. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe to Curious Minds for more fascinating content.